Book nibbles. Big ideas, small bites. Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich is one of those rare books that has lingered in the imagination of millions for nearly a century, partly because it is not just a manual about money, but a meditation on the psychology of success. Hill set out in the early 20th century to study the habits and philosophies of the most successful people of his age. He interviewed and corresponded with industrial titans such as Andrew Carnegie, Thomas Edison, Henry Ford, Alexander Graham Bell, and many others, seeking to distill from their lives a formula that could be understood and practiced by ordinary people. The result was a philosophy that went far beyond material accumulation. It was about cultivating a way of thinking, a burning desire, a persistence of will, and a clarity of purpose so strong that riches, financial and otherwise, will be drawn almost inevitably toward the practitioner. To read the book is to be drawn into Hill's conviction that the human mind, properly trained and focused, is the most powerful asset anyone can possess. Hill begins by insisting that everything starts with desire, which he calls the starting point of all achievement. He is not talking about vague wishes or passing whims, but a focused, burning desire that becomes a definite chief aim in life. He recalls how Edwin C. Barnes, a man of modest means, conceived a singular desire. He wanted to become a business partner of Thomas Edison. Barnes did not know Edison, had no money for a train ticket, and no guarantee of even meeting the famous inventor. But his desire was so strong that he found a way to show up at Edison's office and ask for a chance. Edison saw something in the young man's determination and hired him as a menial worker. Barnes accepted the humble position without complaint, for he knew that it was his foothold. Over the years, he proved himself so indispensable that when Edison developed a new dictating machine, Barnes seized the opportunity to sell it nationwide, eventually becoming Edison's partner. Hill uses this story to underline his point. Riches begin as an idea, fertilized by unwavering desire, pursued without hesitation, and sustained by faith until reality bends toward it. Desire alone, however, is not enough unless it is made definite and translated into action. Hill advises readers to write down their exact financial goal, whether it be $10,000, $50,000, or $1 million, and fix a deadline by which they will achieve it. They must write what they are willing to give in return, whether in work, service, or sacrifice, and repeat this statement daily with conviction. To Hill, this practice is not about superstition, but about programming the subconscious mind. The human mind, he suggests, becomes what it constantly feeds upon. By affirming a goal daily, by visualizing it as if already achieved, one plants it so deeply into the subconscious that the mind begins to act upon it automatically, noticing opportunities, attracting allies, and fueling persistence. Hill calls this process autosuggestion, the method by which thoughts become reality. Faith, in Hill's philosophy, is essential. By faith, he does not mean adherence to religious doctrine, but a state of mind cultivated through repeated affirmations and self-suggestion until one believes in one's ability so completely that doubt has no foothold. He recalls how Charles M. Schwab, working under Andrew Carnegie, exhibited such faith in his ideas that he persuaded skeptical financiers to back bold ventures that transformed the steel industry. Hill emphasizes that faith is a state one creates, not something given from outside. To believe in one's vision even when others scoff, to act as though success is inevitable, is to unleash a force that carries one past obstacles. Closely tied to faith is the power of the imagination. Hill argues that every invention, every fortune, every advancement in civilization begins in the imagination of an individual who dares to envision what does not yet exist. He distinguishes between synthetic imagination, which rearranges old concepts, and creative imagination, which taps into a deeper, almost mysterious realm of inspiration. To him, ideas seem to come from a universal source, flowing into the mind when it is tuned to receive them. He recounts how Edison would often retreat in his solitude to let ideas gestate, or how Henry Ford combined known principles of mechanics in novel ways to revolutionize transportation. Imagination is the workshop of the mind, Hill says, and those who neglect it limit themselves to living within the boundaries others have already drawn. But imagination without organized planning is useless. Hill stresses that riches do not flow to the dreamer alone, but to the dreamer who turns visions into practical plans and executes them with persistence. He recommends forming a definite plan and assembling a mastermind group, an alliance of like-minded individuals who bring knowledge, experience, and encouragement. No one succeeds alone, Hill insists. Andrew Carnegie had his close advisors. Ford surrounded himself with talented engineers. Almost every great achiever relied on collaboration. The power of the mastermind, Hill explains, is not merely additive but multiplicative, a synergy that creates new ideas and solutions greater than the sum of its parts. Persistence, for Hill, is the glue that holds all other qualities together. He warns that most people quit at the first sign of temporary defeat, never realizing how close they were to success. He recounts the story of R.U. Darby, who invested heavily in mining equipment in Colorado during the gold rush. After initial success, the vein of gold seemed to disappear. Discouraged, Darby sold his equipment to a junk dealer and left. The junk dealer, less knowledgeable but more persistent, hired an expert to examine the mine and discovered that the gold vein resumed just 3 feet from where Darby had stopped drilling. Darby later became a successful insurance salesman, carrying with him the lesson that persistence is the difference between failure and fortune. Hill uses such stories to hammer home his conviction that defeat is often temporary, and that persistence is the habit that turns failure into stepping stones. An unusual but striking chapter in Hill's philosophy concerns the transmutation of sexual energy. He argues that the energy that drives human sexuality is one of the most powerful forces in existence, and that many great leaders and artists have learned, consciously or unconsciously, to channel that energy into creative and productive endeavors. Hill cites examples of men whose greatest achievements came after they learned to redirect their sexual drive into ambition, leadership, or artistry. He does not advocate repression, but transformation, taking a primal energy and converting it into a higher form of expression. It is one of his most controversial ideas, yet reflects his broader belief that the human mind and body harbor vast potential energies that, if properly directed, can fuel greatness. Underlying many of Hill's ideas is the role of the subconscious mind. He describes it as a bridge between the conscious will and the infinite intelligence of the universe, absorbing repeated thoughts and translating them into action. Whatever one feeds to the subconscious, whether fear or confidence, failure or success, will manifest in external results. Thus, guarding the mind against negative influences is paramount. Hill emphasizes the need for positive emotion, for faith and desire, to dominate, for fear, envy, doubt, and procrastination to be excluded. He suggests practicing gratitude, visualization, and affirmation to continually condition the subconscious. Just as a farmer must weed his field, so must a person weed his mental garden, allowing only the seeds of desired outcomes to take root. Decision, in Hill's schema, is another critical quality. He found that successful people make decisions quickly and change them slowly, if at all, whereas unsuccessful people delay decisions endlessly and change them at the slightest provocation. Indecision breeds doubt, and doubt breeds fear, creating a vicious cycle that paralyzes action. Hill points to leaders like Lincoln, who made bold decisions in moments of crisis and held to them with steadfastness. He urges readers to cultivate the habit of decisive action, for opportunities rarely linger. To hesitate is often to lose. Hill also warns against the 6 basic fears that enslave the human mind: the fear of poverty, criticism, ill health, loss of love, old age, and death. These fears, he says, are the greatest obstacles to success because they sap initiative and erode confidence. He describes how fear of poverty keeps people clinging to jobs they despise, how fear of criticism silences original ideas, how fear of ill health becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, and how fear of old age or death makes people timid. To overcome fear, one must recognize it, confront it, and replace it with faith. Hill insists that the mind cannot hold both fear and faith at once. The stronger one will dominate. He returns often to the concept of organized knowledge. Knowledge itself, he notes, is not power. Only applied knowledge is power. Countless people are highly educated, yet unsuccessful because they never apply what they know toward a definite purpose. He cites the example of Henry Ford, who had little formal education but surrounded himself with experts and harnessed their knowledge toward his vision. Specialized knowledge, combined with imagination and planning, becomes a force for riches. Thus, one must continually seek learning, not for its own sake alone, but to serve a definite goal. One of the most memorable concepts in the book is the mastermind, which Hill elevates almost to the level of a spiritual principle. He describes it as the coordination of knowledge and effort between two or more people who work toward a definite purpose in harmony. The effect, he says, is not merely collaboration, but the creation of a third mind, a kind of invisible intelligence greater than any individual's. He believed that Carnegie, Edison, Ford, and other great men drew upon this principle consciously or unconsciously, surrounding themselves with strong associates who amplified their own powers. Hill urges readers to form their own mastermind groups, whether in business, study, or mutual encouragement, for no one achieves greatness alone. Throughout the book, Hill sprinkles stories of people who exemplified his principles. He recalls how Abraham Lincoln, though racked with melancholy and self-doubt, persisted in his vision and became one of history's greatest leaders. He recounts how Henry Ford ignored ridicule when he insisted on building the V8 engine block, persisting until his engineers finally succeeded, creating a car that revolutionized the industry. He cites countless unnamed men and women who, by applying desire, faith, persistence, and planning, rose from obscurity to wealth. These stories are meant not merely to inspire, but to demonstrate the universality of his formula. What ties Hill's philosophy together is his conviction that thought is the ultimate currency. He declares that thoughts are things charged with power, capable of transforming into material reality when focused with desire and faith. This was a radical notion in his time and remains provocative today. He urges readers to guard their thoughts as they would guard treasure, for the mind attracts what it dwells upon. A person who constantly thinks of scarcity, failure, and fear will find those very things manifesting in life. A person who fills the mind with abundance, courage, and definite goals will draw those into reality. Hill's law of attraction is not mystical to him, but practical. The mind directs attention, attention fuels action, and action brings results. Yet Hill does not ignore the role of failure. He insists that every adversity carries with it the seed of equal or greater benefit, if one has the wit to look for it. He recalls inventors who failed hundreds of times before succeeding, entrepreneurs who lost fortunes before building greater ones, and ordinary people whose setbacks became turning points. Failure, he argues, is not to be feared but embraced as feedback, as education, as part of the path. Those who interpret failure as final quit too soon. Those who interpret it as temporary grow stronger and more determined. The book ends with a kind of challenge. Hill insists that riches, whether of money, happiness, or fulfillment, are available to anyone who applies the principles consistently. He does not pretend the path is easy. It demands discipline, self-control, and the willingness to think independently. It requires breaking free from fear, from the inertia of habit, from the influence of naysayers. But he insists that the rewards are immense, for to master one's thoughts is to master one's destiny. His own conviction is palpable. He writes as one who believes he has uncovered a universal law, as real and reliable as gravity, awaiting only the practitioner's faith. Reading Think and Grow Rich today is to encounter both the optimism of its era and the timelessness of its insights. Some of Hill's language is old-fashioned, some of his examples dated, yet the core message resonates. Success begins in the mind. Whether one seeks wealth, creative achievement, or personal fulfillment, the principles remain relevant. Define a clear desire. Cultivate unshakable faith. Feed the subconscious with positive images. Use imagination to forge new possibilities. Plan with precision. Persist without ceasing. Surround yourself with allies in a mastermind. Transmute your energies into productive channels. Make decisions with confidence. And above all, guard your thoughts, for they are the seeds of everything you will ever harvest. Hill's book endures not because it offers shortcuts, but because it reveals again and again that the ultimate treasure is the disciplined, focused, fearless human mind. And that's it. Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich. Thanks for listening to Book Nibbles. If you enjoyed this bite-sized book, don't forget to subscribe for more quick, insightful summaries. See you in the next nibble.